Certain locations in global geopolitics hold immense power, none more so than the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway separating the Persian Gulf from the Indian Ocean is the jugular vein of the global energy system. Every day, colossal tankers carry a fifth of the world's oil. Through this confined space, under constant threat of disruption, the strait is patrolled by global superpowers and shadowed by regional ambitions, especially Iran, which sees it as both a security asset and a tool of leverage. In 2025, tensions have reached a boiling point, making the stability of Hormuz a matter of urgent global concern. To understand Hormuz is to grasp the fragile interconnectedness and vulnerability of our modern world. Geography is destiny at the Strait of Hormuz, a mere 30 miles wide at its narrowest, with deep water channels just a few miles across. All maritime traffic from the Persian Gulf must funnel through this bottleneck, passing dangerously close to Iranian territory. For Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain and Qatar, Hormuz is their only maritime outlet, making them acutely vulnerable to any disruption. The strait's confined contested waters and proximity to Iranian defenses create a perfect storm of strategic risk. Here the world's energy supply doesn't just pass near danger, it passes directly through it every single day. Each day about 20 million barrels of oil, 1/5 of global consumption transit the Strait of Hormuz. It's also a major route for liquefied natural gas, especially from Qatar, making it essential for energy-hungry Asian economies. The Persian Gulf nations hold half the world's oil reserves and 40% of its natural gas, cementing Hormuz's centrality to global markets. There's no quick substitute for this supply. Any disruption sends oil prices soaring and threatens economic stability worldwide. The world's economic health is built on the assumption that tankers will keep moving through Hormuz. Any threat to this flow risks a global economic heart attack. Iran's unique geography grants it a commanding position over one of the world's most critical maritime choke points, the Strait of Hormuz, stretching along the northern coast. Iran's territory hugs the narrow waterway, allowing it to project power directly onto the strait. Its naval bases are strategically positioned not just as defensive outposts, but as launch pads for influence and control over the vital shipping lanes that pass through these waters. Along the rugged coastline, Iran has installed a network of missile batteries and radar stations, all carefully placed to monitor and, if necessary, target any vessel moving through the strait. These missile sites are not just symbolic, they are a constant reminder to the world's navies and commercial fleets that Iran can exert force at a moment's notice. Iran's grip extends beyond the mainland. It controls 7 of the 8 main islands, scattered across the strait, each one acting as a forward operating base. These islands are more than just dots on a map. They are critical outposts that allow Iran to monitor, intercept and, if needed, disrupt maritime traffic. Among these, Abu Musa and the Greater and Lesser Tunbay Islands stand out for their strategic value. Their location near the shipping lanes means they can serve as both early warning stations and launch points for military operations, giving Iran a significant advantage in any potential conflict. Over the years, Iran has transformed these islands into heavily fortified platforms, bristling with bunkers, radar arrays, and anti-ship missile systems. These fortifications are designed to withstand attack and to project power far beyond the islands themselves, making them formidable obstacles for any adversary. Every day, massive oil tankers and cargo ships pass through the Strait of Hormuz, carrying 1/5 of the world's traded oil. Each vessel is closely watched by Iranian patrols, surveillance towers, and radar installations. This constant scrutiny creates an atmosphere of tension, as every ship's movement is tracked and analyzed. Iran's military doctrine in the strait is built around asymmetrical warfare. Instead of matching larger navy ship for ship, Iran relies on swarms of fast attack boats, the threat of naval mines, and a vast arsenal of anti-ship missiles. This approach allows Iran to punch above its weight, making any attempt to challenge its control costly and dangerous. With these tools, Iran can disrupt shipping at will, harassing vessels closing lanes, or even launching attacks. The mere possibility of such disruption is enough to send shockwaves through global markets, as the world's energy supply depends on the uninterrupted flow of oil. Through this narrow passage, of course, Iran itself is deeply reliant on the strait for its own oil exports. Its economy depends on the ability to send crude to international markets, making the strait both a lifeline and a potential vulnerability. Yet this reliance is also a source of leverage. Iran's credible threat to close the strait even temporarily serves as a powerful deterrent against external pressure, and as a bargaining chip in international negotiations. The ultimate decision to escalate or de-escalate tensions in the strait lies with Iran's Supreme National Security Council, a body that weighs the risks and rewards of any action with utmost care. But the capability and logic for using Hormuz as a weapon are always present, woven into Iran's strategic thinking and military planning. As long as the world depends on the Strait of Hormuz, this narrow waterway will remain a permanent flashpoint, where geography, strategy, and global interests collide. Asia's economic giants, China, Japan, India, and South Korea, are critically dependent on the energy flowing through Hormuz. Every day a vast armada of oil tankers and gas carriers makes its way through this narrow waterway, carrying the lifeblood of modern economies to the world's fastest-growing region. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a shipping lane. It is the beating heart of Asia's energy security, a vital artery that sustains the ambitions and daily lives of billions. In 2024, over 80% of the Strait's oil and gas exports were bound for Asia. This staggering figure highlights just how much the region's prosperity, and indeed the world's, relies on the uninterrupted flow of energy through these waters. The strait is a global chokepoint, and any disruption here would send shockwaves far beyond its shores. China, the world's largest energy importer, gets nearly half its oil imports via Hormuz. Its sprawling cities, factories, and transportation are powered by this steady stream of crude. For China, energy security is national security, and the Strait of Hormuz is a strategic lifeline that cannot be replaced overnight. Japan, an island nation with few natural resources of its own, relies on the strait for 80% of its energy. Without these imports, its advanced industries, high-speed trains, and vibrant cities would grind to a halt. The Japanese economy, built on reliability and precision, is acutely vulnerable to any disruption in the supply chain. For these countries, a closure would be catastrophic, threatening industry power supplies and social stability. Factories would fall silent, cities could plunge into darkness, and millions of lives would be upended. The ripple effects would be felt in every corner of society. From the stock market to the dinner table, their reliance creates a complex web. These nations depend on U.S. security guarantees to keep the strait open, but they also need stable relations with Iran and the Gulf states that control the flow of oil. Diplomacy, military presence, and economic interests are all intertwined in a delicate balance that must be carefully managed. A crisis in Hormuz would trigger a global recession. With Asia at its epicenter, markets would tumble, trade would stall, and the shockwaves would reverberate through every sector of the global economy. The world would be reminded in the harshest terms of just how interconnected and fragile our energy systems truly are. The world's prosperity is tied to the uninterrupted flow of energy through this narrow channel. As long as the Strait of Hormuz remains open, economies thrive and societies flourish. But its vulnerability is a stark reminder that the thirst for energy shapes not just nations but the fate of the entire world. The Strait of Hormuz has a history of conflict, most notably during the 1980s tanker war. When Iran and Iraq targeted each other's shipping, hundreds of vessels were attacked, prompting U.S. intervention and direct clashes with Iran. The 1988 downing of Iran Air Flight 655 by the USS Vincennes left a lasting scar on U.S.-Iran relations. More recently, the 2019 tanker attacks and IRGC showed Iran's willingness to disrupt maritime traffic. Each crisis has sent shockwaves through energy markets and highlighted the strait's fragility. These episodes prove that threats to close Hormuz are real, not rhetorical. The region's history is a constant reminder. Peace here is never guaranteed. The world must remain vigilant to avoid repeating past mistakes. In June 2025, U.S. airstrikes on Iran's nuclear sites triggered a dramatic escalation. Iran's parliament responded by voting to close the Strait of Hormuz to international shipping. Oil prices spiked instantly, threatening global inflation and recession. Diplomatic efforts faltered, with the U.S. urging China to intervene. But Beijing remained cautious. The world watched as Iran's Supreme National Security Council weighed its next move. The crisis turned the theoretical risk of a Hormuz closure into a terrifying reality. The fate of the global economy now hangs on decisions made in Tehran. For decades, the United States has stood as the principal security guarantor in the Persian Gulf, projecting power across the region and shaping the balance of forces. American warships patrol the waters, and sprawling military bases dot the landscape, all designed to reassure allies and deter adversaries. The U.S. presence is not just a show of strength. It's a signal to the world that the Gulf's vital sea lanes, especially the Strait of Hormuz, are under vigilant watch. With fleets and bases strategically positioned, the U.S. aims to deter threats, keep the Strait of Hormuz open, and ensure that the flow of oil and commerce remains uninterrupted. These deployments are a constant reminder to regional powers, especially Iran, that any attempt to close the strait would be met with formidable resistance. The military presence is meant to send a clear message to Iran. Any hostile action will be countered, but it's also a delicate dance, as U.S. and Iranian vessels often operate in close quarters, raising the risk of miscalculation or accidental confrontation. If necessary, the U.S. is prepared to forcibly reopen the strait, using overwhelming force to restore the flow of maritime traffic. Military exercises and shows of force are routine, underscoring America's commitment to keeping this global choke point open. Yet despite this massive investment, America's direct dependence on Gulf oil has sharply declined in recent years. Thanks to domestic energy production, the U.S. now imports only a fraction of its oil from the region. The real American interest lies in the stability of global energy markets. Disruptions in the Gulf ripple across the world, affecting prices and economies far beyond U.S. shores. The Gulf's oil is a lifeblood for global trade, and any threat to its flow is a threat to worldwide economic stability. Even if the U.S. itself doesn't rely heavily on Gulf oil, a closure of Hormuz would send gasoline prices soaring at home, disrupt supply chains, and trigger economic turmoil. American consumers and businesses would feel the shock almost immediately. The crisis of June 2025 laid bare the limits of U.S. power in the region. Despite its unmatched military capabilities, America found itself unable to prevent escalation or guarantee the safe passage of ships through the strait. Military might, for all its strength, cannot always control events on the ground or at sea. Escalation can happen quickly, and even the most powerful navy cannot guarantee absolute security in such a volatile environment. Any operation to forcibly reopen the strait carries enormous risks: the possibility of a wider regional war, prolonged disruption to global trade, and unpredictable consequences for all involved. Ultimately, the security of the Strait of Hormuz depends on a fragile balance, one that combines military deterrence with careful diplomacy. Dialogue, alliances, and constant vigilance are all essential to keeping the peace. Today, that balance is more precarious than ever, as new threats and shifting alliances test the limits of American power and the world's reliance on this vital waterway. The world's dependence on Hormuz is magnified by the lack of alternatives. Pipelines in Saudi Arabia and the UAE can bypass the strait, but their combined capacity is just a fraction of what's needed. Iran's own bypass pipeline has faced technical setbacks and limited capacity for most Gulf producers. There's simply no other route if Hormuz closes. Their oil stays in the ground. Unlike the Suez Canal, there's no detour for Persian Gulf tankers. This stark reality gives immense power to anyone who can threaten the channel. Until the world diversifies its energy sources, Hormuz will remain the world's most vital and dangerous choke point.